Senate will come to order. I ask everyone present to please rise for the presentation of colors. Color Guard, parade the colors. Everyone present, please join us in our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Today we are joined by Lieutenant Colonel Derek Gutting. He is the division chaplain at Fort Drum, the 10th Mountain Division, and he will lead us in our invocation. Colonel Gutting.
Will you bow with me this afternoon? Lord, on this very good day, we humbly come before you, asking that your Spirit be quickened with all whom have gathered in this chamber. We are so very grateful for the opportunity to be used by you in service to the citizenry of the great state of New York, our 10th Mountain home, and to the people of this exceptional nation. You have shown us what is good and what is required of us, and we ask that you help us daily to do justly, love mercy, and to walk humbly with you and all of mankind. In this new year, renew our spirit and our strength so we might run and not grow weary, that we would walk and not grow faint. Sustain us and lead us as we fight the good fight of faith, both at home and abroad, ever upward, always climbing. All of this we ask in your name. Amen.
Amen. Reading of the journal.
In Senate Monday, February 5th, the Senate met pursuant to adjournment. The Journal of Sunday, February 4th, was read and approved. On motion, Senate adjourned.
Without objection, the journal stands approved as read. Presentations of petitions, messages from the Assembly, messages from the Governor, reports of standing committees, reports of select committees, communications and reports from state officers, motions and resolutions. Senator DeFrancisco.
Mr. President, on page 19, I offer the following amendments to Calendar 170, Senate Print 685 by Senator Ort, and ask that said bill retain its place on the third reading calendar.
So ordered.
Could we now take up a previously adopted resolution? Excuse me. I move to adopt the resolution calendar with the exception of Resolution 3708.
All in favor of adopting the resolution calendar with the exception of Resolution 3708, please signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Resolution calendar is adopted. Senator DeFrancisco.
Can we now please take up a previously adopted Resolution 3375 by Senator Ritchie, read it in its entirety, and call on Senator Ritchie.
And the Secretary will read.
Legislative Resolution number 3375 by Senator Ritchie, memorializing Governor Andrew M. Cuomo to proclaim February 6, 2018 as 10th Mountain Division and Fort Drum Day in the state of New York. Whereas Fort Drum is located in Jefferson County in northern New York and is the largest military installation in the northeastern United States. And whereas Fort Drum, previously known as Pine Camp, was renamed in honor of Lieutenant General Hugh Drum, a decorated national hero, former commander of 1st Army, and an early leader of the state's own volunteer militia, the New York Guard. And whereas for 32 years, Fort Drum has been the home of the United States Army's storied 10th Mountain Division, one of the most deployed divisions in the United States Army. And whereas the 10th Mountain Division served our nation with honor, distinction, and great sacrifice as a part of Operation Enduring Freedom and other actions central to our nation's response to the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001. And whereas elements of the 10th Mountain Division based on Fort Drum were the first to be deployed in the aftermath of those attacks and the last units to return from combat duty. And whereas in addition to Operation Enduring Freedom, 10th Mountain Division deployments have included Hurricane Andrew relief in Florida, Operation Restore Hope in Somalia, Operation Uphold Democracy in Haiti, Task Force Eagle in Kosovo, Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation Freedom Sentinel in Afghanistan, and advise and assist operations throughout the world. And whereas more than 300 brave men and women of the 10th Mountain Division based in Fort Drum have given their lives to the cause of defeating global terrorism. And whereas the distinguished service of units assigned to Fort Drum has been celebrated by presidents, members of Congress, and members of the international community. And whereas in addition to its vital role in our nation's defense, Fort Drum is also the largest employer in northern New York and an economic engine for the state and region with a direct impact of more than $1.2 billion. And whereas the more than 30,000 soldiers, officers, retirees, and family members of Fort Drum are an integral part of the community and are welcomed as neighbors, coworkers, classmates, friends, and fellow New Yorkers. And whereas it is the sense of this legislative body to salute the soldiers and officers of the 10th Mountain Division, to honor their dedication to preserving our freedom and our nation, and to recognize their individual and collective contributions to our communities and to New York State. And whereas for the past 7 years, 10th Mountain Division and Fort Drum Day has served to educate members of this legislative body about the sacrifices made every day by the brave men and women of our armed forces, as well as the importance of Fort Drum to our nation's defense and New York's economy. And whereas Fort Drum has and will continue to play an important and critical role in ensuring our nation's military readiness to defend our state and nation against hostility and threats to our safety and national security. Now, therefore, be it resolved that this legislative body pauses deliberations to memorialize Governor Andrew M. Cuomo to proclaim February 6, 2018 as 10th Mountain Division and Fort Drum Day in the state of New York, and be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution suitably engrossed be transmitted to Major General Walter E. Piatt, Commanding General, 10th Mountain Division in Fort Drum.
Senator Ritchie, on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I am proud to welcome you to the 7th celebration of the 10th Mountain Division in Fort Drum Day in the New York State Senate. The men and women of Fort Drum truly represent the best of the best. They have dedicated themselves to defend our freedom and that of freedom-loving people around the globe. Our soldiers and officers know how to lead, as evidenced by some of those we have had the privilege to host during previous Fort Drum days, including the current Chief of Staff of the United States Army, one of the 7th highest ranking officers in our nation's military, General Mark Milley, the top previous commander of a multinational coalition battling ISIS in Afghanistan, General Stephen Townsend. And that tradition of leadership and distinction continues today with the soldiers and officers you see before you, and those that hopefully you met downstairs in the displays in the LOB. Let me take a moment to introduce them to you. Commanding General Walter Piatt, Brigadier General Patrick Donahoe, Command Sergeant Major Sam Rourke, Command Sergeant Major Ryan Alfaro, Chaplain Lieutenant Colonel Derek Gutting, Captain Sam Kriegler, Master Sergeant Keisha Archer, and we are joined by these native New Yorkers also: Sergeant First Class Brian Lambert of Panyan, Staff Sergeant William Maxwell of Pauling, Sergeant Kyle Milliman of Lansing, Sergeant Jonathan Ruiz of Brooklyn, Sergeant Joseph Frank of Rome, and Specialist Hunter Bishop of Plattsburgh. Please join me in welcoming also a few special guests who are here in the chamber today. Mrs. Cynthia Piatt, Mrs. Deanna Rourke, Colonel Eric Wagner, General Ray Shields representing the New York National Guard. Thank you for being here. And in the gallery, I'd also like to recognize another member of the General and Mrs. Piatt's family, their daughter, Jessica. Along with representatives from the community organizations in my district that work to support Fort Drum's mission and their success. Thank you all for joining us today. Many of you have heard me speak about how proud I am to represent the men and women of Fort Drum, the largest military installation east of the Mississippi, and the importance of the post to the North Country economy, indeed to our entire state as New York's largest single-site employer. I've told you how the soldiers and the officers of Fort Drum and their families are our friends, our neighbors, coaches, volunteer firefighters, and community volunteers, how they are literally intertwined in every community across our region. I cannot overstate how important Fort Drum and the 10th Mountain Division are to the North Country, to New York State, and to the nation. And as you will hear this from General Piatt's address to the nation's defense, the 10th Mountain Division was among the first to deploy overseas in the days and weeks following the horrific terror attacks on New York City and our nation. In fact, units from the 10th Mountain Division have deployed 24 times since September 11th. And in just a few weeks, many of these brave soldiers, including General Piatt and his entire command team, will be again deploying to Iraq in defense of our freedom. I ask that you keep them in your thoughts and prayers. So to the soldiers here, I want to say thank you for your service, because that is what it means to be part of our armed services. There is no higher calling than service to others. Service to the community, service to freedom and liberty. We are all proud of the work you do, proud of the 10th Mountain Division, and proud to call you fellow New Yorkers. Let me close by saying to all my colleagues, and especially to our leader, Senator Flanagan, thank you. Thank you for learning about Fort Drum and supporting our brave troops. I also want to thank Senator Flanagan for taking the trip to the North Country and touring Fort Drum. And once again, I would like to extend that invitation to every member in this chamber to do the same thing. To see the troops here in the Capitol and in the LOB is an experience, but to witness firsthand how they live, how they train is something entirely different. And it will only deepen your appreciation and respect for those they are and what they do. So welcome to all of you. And thank you for your service. And once again, we are all so very proud of all of you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Ritchie. Senator Flanagan on the resolution.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to welcome our guests, and I'm in awe. I really am in awe when all of you are here. And Senator Ritchie, who does a spectacular job, she's right. I've heard about Fort Drum. You know, we've had people here for a number of years. There's nothing like seeing it. And it's, you know, you think Fort, okay, I think like a kid, you know, it's like a nifty, cool thing. It's a city. It really is a city. There are thousands of people there. And I remember going, and I have not had the honor or the privilege of serving in the military. But I remember going and getting some education from young men and women who were simulating battles. They put us in a room with smoke, with loud noise, all kinds of things that were just simulations. Then they took us in another room and they showed us body parts. fake. But like, legs ripped apart, arms half severed. And I'm thinking, I'm looking at this on a mannequin. I can't fathom what the heck that would be like in person. And I remember when we were there, it was hot. It was hot. And all of these folks had on tons of gear. And I forget exactly what it was, but I just remember thinking, my goodness, it's just, this is, again, a simulation. I can't imagine what it would be like to be over in Iraq. But I want to thank the General and his entire team for their service. And General, you can't quite see, but we have a lot of young people in our gallery. And to the young boys and girls who are here, you have freedoms, and you have the ability to be here. You have the opportunity for free speech, a great education, and to be part of your government, because these people protect us. And thank God that they do. Thank you for your service, and I guess I'm just deeply grateful. And General, I think I told you, we said this, you came into our conference. I'm finally glad to meet the real General, the beautiful woman to your left, because I know she represents management and you are labor, which is the way it should be. But it really is an honor and a privilege. And we have a number of our colleagues who have served with distinction in the military, and I'm sure they have a better appreciation than I. But I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you with the utmost sincerity. And I believe, Senator Croce, the floor is now, or the podium is going to be reserved for the General.
Yes, Mr. Leader. We do have two other members who would like to address the resolution. Senator Larkin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, General. 23 and a half years I wore that uniform. And the 10th Mountain Division, the first time I ever heard about them, I was back from Korea. I had 2 little trips to Korea I'll never forget. And we went up to a place called Camp Drum then. And somebody said, we're going to do some glider training. And I said, I have bad legs and bad eyes. I can't do it. And they said, Lieutenant, yes, you will. And later on, I studied a little bit more about the 10th. And then I read all about Senator Dole. Senator Bob Dole was wounded just days before the fighting in Italy, as your history tells you. And when we were doing something later on in life, this chamber helped us when we were talking about a Purple Heart stamp and a Purple Heart monument. And Bob Dole stood up there and said, the 10th Mountain should be one of the top. And it was, and it is. Young sergeants, I looked here and I said, God, think about it, Billy. You were a first sergeant one time. I said, yes, and I used to listen to the older sergeants. Am I correct, General? That's how we learned. But you are a hero in yourself, but you are a stained project of the United States, the defense of our country. There are young people. You have some of yours who've been 2 and 3 trips across the pond. One of my neighbors is over there right now, and he said, the 10th Mountain takes second place to none, and you don't. Because number one, nobody gets to this assignment as a commanding general of the 10th Mountain. It's evidenced today by the Chief of Staff of the United States Army. You came here, right, General Miley? And every one of you should be proud. But it's our job. It's our job to tell the rest of our nation, not just our state, that the freedoms that we enjoy what these young people can do and how great our country is because we have people like General Piatt and his troops in the 10th Mountain Division. I'll never forget my life with it. And when you command troops in combat, you make sure your troops are ready. And General, everybody tells me you're standing tall. May God bless you and your members and their families. Thank you very much.
Senator Little.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to begin by thanking Senator Ritchie for initiating Fort Drum Day. When she first came to the Senate, that was one of the first things she did want to accomplish, and how well she has accomplished that. Certainly, I did not, regretfully, have any military experience, so my experience has been through my recently retired Navy son of 26 years. But I would like to call some attention, not take tension away from the general and the members of the military, but to the non-paid, totally volunteer person in the military, the spouses of our leaders in the military. Cynthia Piatt is here today, and as the wife of the general, she has lots of responsibilities, taking care of and welcoming families who arrive, changes of leadership under the general, all of that, helping families adjust to their new locations and their places in the military. And looking back and talking to her last night, the number of times that she has had to move, I think, if I'm correct, it was 22 different locations throughout their marriage they have moved. So not only is she an expert at unpacking and setting up a household within hours and days, the general said 72 hours she could be totally set up at whatever location she went to. But dealing with her children as they change schools. And Jessica's in the audience in the galley today, as well as they have a son, Joshua, who moved around, even a lot through high school, and changing schools and moving on as they go along. It's not easy, and I don't think we always understand that. But her role is as important as the general's, not on the front lines, but she's on the back line with the families. And many times it's the family who is undergoing some turmoil and emotional distress that Cynthia and women like Cynthia have to deal with. So thank you for your service, as well as all those paid members of the military. Thank you very much, and thank you for being here.
Senator Sanders.
Thank you, sir. Although my brother and we did the Marine Corps, my younger brother defected, and he went to the 101st. My nephew continued that line of going, and my nephew has done 2 tours Iraq, 1 tour Afghanistan, 1 tour DMZ, on, and that's what he can tell me at least. But we hear about the Mountain Division. We hear about these guys who are able to take the snow as easy as I did warm weather training. I did desert training, and I enjoyed it. So I cannot fathom anybody who would enjoy temperature lower than 50 degrees. I suspect that your unit deals with people dealing a little lower than 50 degrees general. I might not do very well there, sir, but if you ever come to the desert, I can do that. I want to commend you all because you have really put yourself in harm's way over and over and over again, and have acquainted yourself quite well. That I'm sure that if we went and did a study of people, there would be 1 or 2 other groups that may say how well you do, in Iraq and other places. I wish you well in your return to it. I really hope that, as we were speaking earlier, General, that it is just a nation-building exercise, that we get there and people decide to create a nation and go in a certain direction, and that there will be no terrorism, no problems while you were there. But I can say to those who want to create problems, that we are sending one of the best units that we have out there, and they will acquaint themselves quite well as they have in days gone by. Thank you, Mr. President. Godspeed to you all on your journey.
Senator Griffo.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thanks, Senator Ritchie, for hosting this event each and every year, because it's an honor to have you in our presence, to all of you, General, and all the troops assembled. I just simply want to say that to have the opportunity to express my great respect, my admiration, and my appreciation for your bravery, for your sacrifice, and most importantly, for your service. You are truly the defenders of democracy. God bless you, and may He continue to keep you in good grace.
Senators and ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor to introduce to you the commander of the 10th Mountain Division, New York's own, Major General Walter Piatt. General?
Thank you very much. Good morning, and thank you for this incredible welcome to this beautiful capital in the great Empire State. And thank you again for honoring this division on the 7th Fort Drum and 10th Mountain Division Day. Majority Leader John Flanagan, Independent Democratic Conference Leader Jeff Klein, Democratic Conference Leader Andrea Stewart Cousins, and our very own Senator Patty Ritchie and her staff and all your staffs, and for all of you for your service in and out of uniform and for what you do in this chamber every day. It's to protect these institutions and why we fight. And Senator, you're right, it's for that next generation as well. The Sergeant Major will be here afterwards to take their recruiting statement, so we'll be ready. But this is what we do, and if I'd ever just want to say, we can't say thank you enough to our very own and special patriot, to the 10th Mountain Division, Senator Ritchie. Her dedication to our post, its soldiers and our families, it humbles us all, inspires us every day, and motivates us to continue to serve. I tell everyone where I go that North Country is the best military community in our Army. I tell it that way because on several occasions, when my son was playing high school sports for the Carthage Comets, he received something in the mail from Senator Ritchie. A photo from a newspaper, a local newspaper, showing a sport highlight saying, "I saw something special about you, and I wanted to send this to you." That doesn't happen everywhere, and it didn't happen because of my rank. It happened because my son was Josh Piatt, and he was a member of a school district that just happened to have military kids in it. He holds that on his wall today. Still. So thank you, Senator. I appreciate you all welcoming us a little bit early this year because, as mentioned, the division headquarters begins our deployment to Iraq. We start heading out this week. We will complete our deployment by early March. And then by mid-March, I will assume the duties of the Coalition Force Joint Land Component Commander in Iraq. We know that this deployment comes at a very critical time. We deployed there in January for 2 weeks. And you're right, it was a little bit warm there, Senator. And folks who were flying the helicopters, it was about 40 degrees. And they were cold. They were from Oklahoma, and they said, "We need to turn on the heat for the general and the sergeant major in the back." Sergeant Major reminded them, "Hey, we're the 10th Mountain Division. This is kind of hot, so please don't turn the heat on. We'll take the air conditioning." But we do desert so well. We go where we're told. and we fight where we go and we win where we fight. That is the 10th Mountain Division. But this deployment comes at a critical time. It comes at a critical time now that Iraqi people now have hope. There's a real sense of joy in Baghdad because of this last victory they achieved against the Islamic State. And it was a victory. The Islamic State invaded Iraq and pushed forward as the Iraqi army had to flee through the violence that was coming. They were at the gates of Baghdad. Iraq itself was almost overthrown. It was the Iraqi security forces and the Iraqi people that stood up for this. They were enabled by a mighty coalition, and they will continue to get our support. But it was the Iraqi soldiers that went door to door, block by block in Mosul to defeat the most ruthless enemy this world has seen. And though it was a victory for the people of Iraq, this enemy is a global threat, and this was a victory for the world. Folks often ask, what are they doing about their own security? The real question is, what have they done for world security? They defeated ISIS in Iraq and in Syria. They defeated their caliphate. Now we must complete the destruction of this terror group, and that's what the 10th Mountain Division will now deploy to go and do. Our 3rd Brigade, our Patriot Brigade from Fort Polk, Louisiana, has been over there since last September. They moved into country in September, and they immediately went where the enemy was, providing critical fire support, intelligence support, and helped defeat the remnants of ISIS in Mosul and pursued it throughout Hawija and now the Anbar Valley all the way to the border of Syria. The enemy is defeated as a conventional threat, but he's not destroyed. The time is now, and he remains ever vigilant. And October 1st, we lost a soldier in Iraq. Specialist Alex Misseldine. He was attacked by an improvised explosive device just outside of Salah ad-Din Operations Center. I had the honor of presiding over his funeral in Tyler, Texas. We presided down a 10-mile convoy through a town where everybody stopped their cars and put their hands on the heart for this fallen hero. All Alex wanted to do was serve his country. All he wanted to do was serve his unit in combat. He fought to earn his spot on that deployment. It cost him his life and his parents their only son. But as his father said to me, this is the cost of our freedom, and I hope Alex's sacrifice will inspire the unit and this division to continue to serve. And it certainly does. When I was here in this chamber last May, I told you about what the units in the 10th Mountain Division were doing. Our Combat Aviation Brigade deployed to Eastern Europe, assuring our allies, deterring our adversaries, building up military power in a NATO alliance where we have seen great reduction and increased threats from adversaries. They returned just in time for Thanksgiving, but now they are flying again in Euro helicopters over the North Country as they get ready for whatever mission is next. We deployed one of their Apache battalions to the Republic of Korea for a 9-month deployment at a time that is absolutely critical that we have military presence forward to deter adversaries on the Korean Peninsula. And it was right about that time in the fall that hurricanes brought devastation to the doorstep for thousands of American citizens. What called from our 10th Mountain Division was a very specialized unit, the 510th Human Resource Company. They deployed no notice to Texas. And as soon as they came back from supporting Hurricane Harvey, they were once again called to go to Puerto Rico to support the aftermath of Hurricane Maria. They didn't know where they were going to stay. They had a rucksack, but all of them said, now we get to go help our own citizens. A young lieutenant led the deployment to Puerto Rico. Her husband, also in the 10th Mountain Division, was out on exercises doing a live fire. She was unable to call them, but she got on that plane. She did her job. And because of that specialized unit, many folks that were there to help with the reconstruction and help with the devastation were able to follow through, get in country, and go to where they needed to go. They did it for the honor to help our fellow Americans. In September, we also sent 1st Battalion, 87th Infantry Regiment to Afghanistan and to Cameroon, Africa, on a deployment that came with almost no notice. Our nation called, just giving us weeks to get this regiment ready. And they were. They are deployed to Afghanistan today. They are helping specialized units and special operations forces all around the country, taking the fight to the enemy and enabling Afghan security forces to become ready. And also, our 548th Combat Sustainment Brigade returned home from a successful deployment in the Middle East just before Christmas, and it came down to the wire. We didn't know if we were going to get them back. They supported from Kuwait, but they were really everywhere. All the way to Syria, we had soldiers from the 10th Mountain Division supporting our forces in the fight, and they did a marvelous job. Today, we have over 4,000 soldiers deployed to 17 different countries around the world: Korea, many countries in Africa, Iraq, Afghanistan, and many more. We say all the time, the 10th Mountain Patch, the sun never sets on our patch. We are stationed in Fort Drum, New York, but we go everywhere, and we're always there. And if all that coming and going didn't keep us busy enough, we leaned forward on a campaign to once again open our great post, which I so proudly call a nature preserve, that we just happen to be allowed to train soldiers on. We opened our post to our surrounding communities. Our post is beautiful and shares an awesome history with the rest of northern New York. But in the past 16 years of war and all the security requirements that came with that, we began to build up walls, real and metaphorical. That question about that, we needed to know, we needed to maintain security, there's no question. But we did not need to be divided from the community that supports us so well. In June, we opened up the post to more than 10,000 soldiers, families, and community members to host country music star Trace Atkins for a free concert. We'll do that again this year. Don't know who the artist is going to be, but it'll be big. And just a month later, after the tragic in-line-of-duty death of local hero Trooper Joel Davis, we joined forces with the New York State Troopers to hold his funeral on Fort Drum. After his death, we, like so many other organizations, offered what assistance we could provide. In less than a week, a team of troopers and Fort Drum employees organized a memorial tribute that welcomed close to 4,000 mourners onto our post. It was an incredible honor to be part of remembering so great a man. I will never forget Trooper Joel Davis. He was a hero that ran to meet danger without hesitation. Together we mourn his loss, but we will forever honor his life. His service will never be forgotten. Then in September and December, we opened our post to tours of the Luray Mansion, the ancestral home of the man thought to be the founding father of upstate New York. In November, we brought more than 400 community members, many of them with personal connections to the sites of villages that were dissolved during the expansion of Fort Drum in the 1940s. After that event, I received a letter from one of the participants telling me, and I quote her now, "The Army's obvious concern for the environment has allayed concerns I had harbored for many years previous. As a result of the friendly atmosphere I encountered on Monday, I no longer perceive the installation as foreign territory that must be approached with caution," unquote. In recognizing the past, we are doing great work in solidifying the future of Fort Drum. This perhaps is not the most obvious route to staying relevant for the next 30 years, but I argue it's one of the most effective. And we also started new traditions, hosting the first ever all-Army hockey team for their inaugural game against the Canadian hockey team. And against all odds, we won. And perhaps an even bigger win came that night when we packed the house. There wasn't an empty seat in the Watertown Municipal Arena. Soldiers, their family members, and the community showed up in force to cheer their team on. And with that warm reception on a very cold night, Watertown earned its spot forever as the home ice for Army hockey. And we also spend a lot of time working with communities, talking about how our training needs are expanding, and our enemies gain the ability to defeat us from further and further away. The way we are fighting wars now is changing, and our training has to change with it. We are now facing enemies that can attack us from further away. In many areas, our enemies have us outnumbered, outgunned, and outranged. This is unacceptable. We must be able to win our wars to protect our nations, which means we have to be able to defeat every adversary that poses a threat to our United States. And if we can win that war, we can certainly deter that war. But we need to train against the future fights, because our enemies are expanding these threats through air defense systems that are elaborate, that can deny the U.S. Air Force entry into certain spaces. They make it very difficult. It becomes now, again, a land fight. The call for the U.S. Army and Army infantry is even more important now than it ever has been. But to be able to defeat that enemy, we've got to train against that, against greater standoff, utilizing manned and unmanned systems. We need to be able to train with Air Force and the New York Air National Guard so they can drop their precision munitions on Fort Drum for many years to come on platforms that exist today and many that aren't even invented yet. If we are properly to train our soldiers for what awaits them on the future battlefield, we must continue to train for that future. We must be prepared with methods not yet understood, with technology not yet invented, and doctrine not yet written. And this sort of training brings the idea to bear of all encroachment around our post into clear focus. The main topic of discussion this past year has been industrial wind turbines. Many on either side of the issue always ask me, what is Fort Drum's position? And I remind them strongly, Fort Drum is an advocate for positive growth in the North Country. We must do this together. We know that energy needs to be secure in our nation, and protecting that energy is part of our own national military strategy. We know that green energy is part of that solution, but we also know that if we plan together, we can do this smartly. We just want to be part of that process, and I thank all of you here for allowing us to be part of that process. We have been heard by our local communities and by New York State. Local municipalities and developers alike now are reaching out to us to be part of their planning, and New York State has made our input part of the Article 10 process. These are hard conversations to have, because much is at stake. But you have my promise that I will always be transparent and work towards positive growth in the North Country that we all love so much. And I thank you all for your heartfelt considerations in these delicate matters. But it's true to form. This is the kind of support that we expect, and we have seen from Albany time and time again. And so many things that are important to our soldiers, our families, and our Army. New York steps up to the plate all the time. You supported the Interstate Compact on educational opportunity for military children that addresses transitional issues encountered by military families like enrollment, placement, eligibility. And there's an example in the gallery today. My daughter Jessica went to 4 different high schools. As we moved here before her start of her senior year, a guidance counselor from a local high school, Carthage High School, got her transcripts, made sure that she had the right classes, could graduate and apply on college on time. And I'm proud to say she received a college scholarship to Duquesne University and graduated in 3.5 years. That would not happen without your help. She would have had to take extra classes. Her college acceptance would have been delayed, or maybe not have happened at all, and maybe missed time. New York does it right. Now she's back here in Watertown working for the Chamber of Commerce, sitting right next to her boss, Callie Peck. So military kids do recognize that these bases are indeed their homes. You support our unique healthcare model through our support to the Fort Drum Health Planning Organization. The U.S. Army Surgeon General came to visit us twice, and she came in January, which makes her a friend of the 10th Mountain Division. She came to learn about our model and how unique it is. And she visited the facilities that we have off post. We don't have a hospital on our base. It's unique to our military, but we rely on the support of 5 local hospitals and mainly the support from Samaritan Hospital, which I always fondly call Samaritan Army Hospital in Watertown, New York. It is a unique model, but it is a win-win for the New York State and for our soldiers. It's not just about access to health care. It's about military readiness, and for that, I say thank you, New York. The State University of New York supports soldiers and family members access to students' aid initiatives like the Excelsior Scholarship and access to state tuition rates. SUNY and New York State Energy Research Development Authority offer programs to retrain our soldiers who are leaving the service so that they can enter the workforce instead of the unemployment line. On behalf of all of us who strive to keep learning, I say thank you, New York. The New York State Police partner with our Department of Emergency Services for mutual aid, on-post training, and event support. For all of us who sleep well at night, knowing we're safe, I say thank you, New York. You voted to support our military spouses with expedited licensing services with reduced fees for many career fields. For all of us who ask so very much from our spouses and are able to do so little to lessen the impacts on their careers. Thank you, New York. The New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, Region 6, is a steadfast partner in ensuring that our training requirements and sustaining our environment aren't at odds. For the many of us who are in awe of the nature preserve that is Fort Drum, we say thank you, New York. And for your continual investment in keeping Fort Drum as relevant in 30 years as it is today. Through projects like the I-781 connector and the Route 26 overpass linking our main post to our critical airfield, thank you, New York, for cementing our future. And thank you for the young men and women who have grown up in towns and cities throughout New York, left their hometowns to train and become soldiers in the United States Army. Some of those soldiers, as introduced, are here today. Soldiers like Sergeant Joseph Frank from Rome, who was told that the Army would be too hard for him, that he couldn't do it. When he earned the rank of non-commissioned officer, sergeant, it made him think about what else he could accomplish and how far his career in the profession of arms might take him. Others, like Specialist Hunter Bishop from Plattsburgh, answered the call to serve after being affected by the attacks of 9/11, and he wanted to make a difference. Soldiers like Sergeant Jonathan Ruiz could see the smoke from the towers of his school in Brooklyn before the teachers closed the window blinds. He didn't understand what was happening then, but he said that years later, that's what motivated him to enlist. For all those soldiers, I say thank you, New York. The coalition I will soon join in Iraq faces, as I said, a difficult mission. For wars do not end in peace, and the terrorists are still there. Although defeated militarily, they still pose a threat. We must continue with surgical precision, hunt down those who mean to threaten Iraq, Syria, and indeed our own United States. But we must also help stabilize the populations as they come back from the ruins of war to rebuild their country so that they can be an independent, free Iraq and a partner to the United States in the Middle East. On 12 May, one of our very first tasks will be to help provide the security for Iraq's elections again. So in all this time of crisis, they have not given up on those democratic ideals. And now the political fight that remains post-conflict is one that we will continue to assist and enable until they are secure in their country. But just as we did here years ago when the Army outgrew Madison Barracks and Sackett's Harbor, New York worked with us to find new areas to train in Pine Plains. When we outgrew that area, more than 500 families left their homes to keep us mission capable on the condition that we would respect and keep their cemeteries and preserve the environment. We keep those promises daily. Has this compromise always come easy? Of course not. But as I've learned on the battlefield, and as our shared history tells us, forcefully disabling the opposition solves only a fraction of the problem, whereas the energy and effort you put into relationships has the capacity to build a lasting peace. Thank you for living that lesson through legislation here in Albany and by the support you show our military members back in your home districts. New York is an incredible place to serve. Please keep our deployed soldiers in your thoughts and prayers in the coming year. We will assist in completing the destruction of ISIS in Iraq so that they can no longer threaten the world. And I want to make sure I will re-emphasize the open invitation that Senator Ritchie gave to you all. Be sure to come visit us in New York. Just dress warm and comfortable, because even in July you're going to get cold, and you're darn sure going to get dirty when you come out and train with the infantry. But we love to show off our installation, and we love for folks to see how wonderful it is cared for the people of upstate New York. Thank you again for this opportunity. We are honored to be here today and a part of this great state every day. But know this, no matter what terror fights, no matter where we send, no matter what challenges we face, your 10th Mountain Division will accomplish the mission. No matter how difficult the job, no matter how dangerous the climb, we will not stop. We will keep moving until we all meet at the top. Ever upward, climb to glory. Thank you all very much.